Good morning. I'm Olivia from the TBA and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. We will shortly be joined by TBA Chairman Julian Richmond-Watson and TBA Chief Executive Claire Sheppard, who will be talking about how the TBA has assisted breeders during the pandemic, including the key findings from the survey which was published in April and what the next steps are for the British breeding industry. If you have any questions during the talk, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen and send us your queries. The talk will be around 20 to 30 minutes long, followed by an interactive Q&A session. We hope you enjoy the webinar and welcome any feedback for future topics you wish to discuss. Now I'll hand over to Julian Richmond-Watson to talk about what the TBA has done for the breeding industry during COVID-19.
Thank you, Olivia, and good morning to everybody. I can't stress how important it is that we all join into these webinars, and I'll start with the breeding protocols. There was no doubt that we were very, very close to losing the breeding season when the lockdown occurred. The Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons advised its members that reproduction was not an essential activity and that therefore they should not be involved with all the breeding activities that we're so used to in the thoroughbred. The team worked incredibly hard with DEFRA and the Chief Veterinary Officer to make sure that we could continue, and our very good relationships with DEFRA paid dividends. We worked with the studs, the standard studs as well, to help produce this protocol, one that you've all become used to, and it's proved to be very successful. The Chief Veterinary Officer couldn't have been more helpful, and I think it's a great feather in the cap for the TBA that we actually managed to make this work. These protocols have now become common and standard practice, and I'm sure we'll all learn from how we move forward. But that was a great success for the TBA. I move on to the member communications. COVID-19 site has been up and running right from the beginning, been updated every day and given you links to government and industry advice. I hope you all find it very useful. I'd like to just thank the TBA team who are dispersed from the office for managing to keep this going every day. And I do hope that you found it useful as we move forward. Claire is going to talk about the survey results. This has been an important snapshot to show exactly where the industry was at the time, and we'll come on to future surveys, etc. later on. And then industry meetings. Well, we have had lots of meetings. Claire has attended no end of Zoom meetings, and I have attended a number. It's been extremely necessary to make sure that breeders' voices were heard, and I think it's absolutely essential that the industry understands where breeders are in this industry and how we need to move forward. The resumption of racing, the funding, the race program are all very important to breeders, and we made sure that your voice has been heard. We also, of course, have Brexit coming around the corner, and we're stepping up the meetings on that, and we'll keep you fully informed on how that moves forward. And then we'll pick up at the end on the next steps and answer questions. But I'll now hand over to Claire to take you through the survey response.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody, from me as well. It's good to hear your overview and perspectives, Julian, and I'll now take you through the areas in more detail. So firstly, the breeding protocols. Prior to the lockdown announcement by the government on the 23rd of March, the TBA were already making preparations for possible government restrictions on people movement that could potentially affect the covering season. The government's clear message at that time, though, to stay at home, however, presented an obvious challenge for breeders and many of our supporting services, such as vets, farriers, feed merchants and transporters, whose business could not be carried out from home. We were not on the list of businesses and activities that definitely could not continue, and therefore we took advice from specialist consultants who suggested the drafting of protocols and supporting guidance to provide clear direction as to how stud farms could continue to operate in line with government advice and obviously most importantly safely, and which would hopefully then secure government support for us to continue. As Julian's mentioned, we already had good working relationships with DEFRA, so once we had these draft protocols, we consulted with them, with active breeders, with the British Equine Veterinary Association and with the Racehorse Transporters Association to ensure they could be delivered. These ultimately gained government approval, with the Chief Veterinary Officer very much commending our approach. And Lord Gardner, the government minister in DEFRA responsible for COVID-19 response, wrote to us, and his closing sentence is outlined on this slide. Our guidance has also been used by breeders in other countries and more broadly in the equine sector. We don't know whether there'll be a second wave or possible further restrictions on a local or a national basis, but we believe through all this work, we're in a strong position with government who recognise the high standards that we set as a sector, and we have robust guidance and advice in place that we can continue to use going forward whilst the pandemic is brought under control. So moving on to member communications. I think we were very aware at the TBA that it was a period of great uncertainty and distress for everyone. We were inundated with many inquiries, both on the phone and by email. I think we're also conscious that if there isn't regular communication from us, rumours can take hold and this can cause further concern. I do hope you feel we did a good job during this time, and a number of our members did write to us and say they were very grateful for the regular information and guidance that we provided. As Julian mentioned, all of our team worked extremely hard remotely to provide the answers and the guidance requested. And those on email, who we've got email addresses, were obviously able to send daily updates during the main lockdown period. We also used social media and the press extensively to try and get our message out to those that do not have email. We also had Alex Jones in the office, the membership secretary, who was on the phone to answer any inquiries and to talk to members during this period. It was all obviously very fast moving. I'm sure we all felt the same. And guidance was being drafted and clarified on a daily basis. So as Julian mentioned, we did develop the COVID-19 hub for information specifically for breeders on the TBA website, and obviously signposting government advice. And that was a resource freely available to all. I believe our work has supported the entire British thoroughbred breeding community. And we hope that there'll be a broader recognition of the TBA and the work that we do and the importance of supporting it through membership in the future. Also, although we obviously cancelled our usual calendar of summer events, we're now running these webinars and we'll have virtual award ceremonies coming soon, all of which will be free to the membership. So moving on to the survey. Obviously, to help us represent the government, represent breeders' view with the government and with industry, and also to help the trustees assess our priorities, we undertook a survey in April. I'd like to thank everybody who took the time to respond. And obviously today is an opportunity to share those results with you. We had a really good response with 336 responses across all different sizes of operation, flat and national hump breeders, and those responsible for the care of nearly 8,000 horses. The survey obviously reflects opinion at one point in time, and it was a point in time when there was a lot of uncertainty, and that certainly came across about whether racing and or the sales season would resume. Obviously, opinions will change as this situation develops, and we'll be looking to survey again later in the year. However, this did provide us with some very useful insight of breeder opinion and impact during lockdown. So if we move on to the next slide. So obviously we were keen to understand the immediate economic impact, and we had a very good response from employers in the sector, which showed that 50 of the 114 breeders who had responded that were employers had already reduced staffing hours. We believe these results illustrate there was a short-term impact on the employment of staff. However, not surprisingly, as we're in the midst of the covering season, the opportunity to take advantage of the government furlough scheme was limited. with a quarter of breeders indicating they would have liked to have used it, but were unable to at the time. So moving on to the financial impact, the survey told us that at this point in time, over a third of breeders were already being financially impacted, with the main method of funding any shortfall being their own savings rather than government loan schemes. There's some early indications that breeders will be cutting back their investment in the industry. And from the responses, it appears that the number of horses in training is the likely first action to be taken. And of interest to us, that was a very high proportion of the respondees, 84%, are racehorse owners as well as breeders. So moving on to the key themes. We also gave the opportunity for comments, and from these a number of key themes emerged. The resumption of sales and racing as soon as possible were highlighted by many, and with now both being back, it's obviously positive news for the bloodstock industry. Sales dates are being firmed up and new sales scheduled to replace some of those we've lost. And we very much welcome that Tattersalls, Goffs and Arcana are working together on this and for the detailed protocols that they have published. The next key theme was general concern about the possible state of the market at the sales, given the overall economic climate, which is not surprising. The level of stallion fees next year was also raised, and whether these could and should be reduced to help the economics of breeders, and stallion owners also expressed their own concerns, worries that their first season sires won't get the chance to prove themselves, or worries that there'll be a potential reduction in the number of mares available for covering next season. Most of the respondees indicated they've carried on with coverings this year, but some indicated they've already made decisions to retire mares now, or may do so if the 2020 sales go badly. A small number of boarding studs felt that COVID-19 was already affecting their business, but there were many more general comments made about the already financially precarious position of breeding, especially for smaller breeders. So moving on to industry representation. So as Julian has mentioned, I've spent most of my life over the last 3 months on Zoom meetings, as the TBA has been represented on many of the racing industry's COVID working groups, including the overall steering group, to ensure the challenges of breeders are heard and recognised and responded to. Obviously, the main focus during April and May of the steering group was to get racing ready to resume as soon as government guidance for elite sports allowed it. Obviously, racing was the first main sport back, and on the day when the government guidance changed, unlike any other major sport, and I think as a breeding industry we should be very grateful for all the hard work the BHA and the others in the industry put in to get racing into this position and back from day one. A horse welfare group has also met weekly, where the main item of discussion to date has been how the industry will respond to financial hardship amongst owners if they're no longer able to afford training fees. And the Racing Foundation has already committed funding for a scheme to be managed by the ROA, which will provide a safety net for the sport in these circumstances. And further information on this should follow later this month. If demand falls at the sales, this could also present financial and practical challenges for breeders if they're not able to sell and move on their stock. We have also been progressing discussion in that group on a number of recommendations from the Horse Welfare Board strategy, which was published in February, including new guidance and educational materials and traceability systems. We'll be talking about these later in the year. On the people side, we're obviously closely monitoring recruitment levels, employment, individual hardship and people wellbeing issues. And racing welfare are playing a leading role in supporting both the racing and breeding industry, and have also got additional funding secured from the Racing Foundation to do this. The TBA are also part of the representations to ensure owners and all participants receive a fair prize money return. And whilst initial position was agreed for the first 10 weeks, we're now working with our horseman colleagues on improving this situation, which is ongoing. And as referenced earlier, we also have weekly calls with DEFRA on COVID and also on Brexit matters. So in all of these areas, the TBA is developing detailed strategies, and I'll now hand back over to the chairman to talk about the next steps.
I hope that's right. Yes, I'll take you on to the next steps. The first was we put in here the follow-up survey in the autumn, and as I said previously, the survey we've done has given us a baseline. We will carry out another survey in the autumn. Ideally, we do it as late as possible, but I think we'll have to do it after the yearling sales because we'll need the information to help steer the industry into 2021. We will need to know how all of you are thinking after the yearling sales, which obviously could be a great concern to all of us. So we will have that survey. I can't wait. We can't really wait until after the foal sales because I think that'll be too late to affect thoughts and ideas for 2021. The promotion of the Great British Bonus Scheme. Well, I hope it's been very well received so far. We've had a number of very good winners with 2 small owner breeders, which is exactly what we want to have, winning £20,000. We believe that is a game-changing amount of money. It's been really hard work to get this scheme up and running, but we do believe it makes a difference. And I would ask you please to make sure all of you to register your yearlings, your 2019 foals as yearlings, and your 2020 foals. I appreciate there's been problems with getting the 2020 foals into register because Weatherby's have had to send the registration process and the blood testing to Ireland. And that has led to a delay. But they promise us that they're getting this better up to scratch and that by the mid-July it will be there. So please register your foals, show that British breeders really appreciate this scheme, and we will take it forward from there. Webinar member engagement, well, here we are. It's a lot better than asking everyone to travel all across the country to Newmarket or somewhere else. And unfortunately, we can't come out to see you, though we were running focus groups and meetings around the country at race meetings, but obviously that hasn't been possible. I hope that member engagement has been good. It's obviously all of you who are listening are online. If we can get all our members online, we can be so much more effective in communicating. We welcome obviously any feedback you've got on what we've been doing so far and what we can do better. And then British breeding industry support. Well, obviously GBB is the main scheme we've worked hard on and brought forward. I'm hoping very much that we can keep that going and expand it as we move forward and persuade the whole of the racing industry that breeders need strong support. So that's where we are with the next steps. And obviously they will evolve and develop as we move forward. So we can now move to questions and answers. And I'll read out the questions and then either I or Claire will answer them. So the first question I have is, has this period of lockdown brought any protocols which have improved the industry and you think should be kept going forward? Well, as I've talked about, I think that the work we've done on protocols for stallions has really worked really well. And my guess is that the online system whereby all the paperwork is completed online will be something that will be adopted by all the stallions for another year. I don't think we have to worry too much about people moving until at the moment, because obviously that will remain the same. If COVID goes away, then obviously that's up to the stallion farms. But I do believe that those protocols have worked really well. And I definitely think that having the ability to reach all of you through webinars is going to make a big difference. One other issue, and I've mentioned Brexit before, Brexit will be coming up soon. And therefore, the movement of horses via online systems, which we've been trialling already, and I hope many of you have been involved in, will become almost certainly a standard practice that we'll all have to get involved in from next year. So it's good to have had a trial, but I'm sure all those protocols will remain in place or be adapted. And the second question I have is, if industry finances take a hit, what is the long-term sustainability of the GBB scheme? The Levy Board approved this scheme nearly 2 years ago now, but then we had difficulties with Department of Culture, Media and Sport agreeing that it wasn't a state aid scheme. And that took us a long time to get there. The BHA, the Horsemen and the Levy Board have been fully supportive all along. It's just that it has taken time to get all the approvals in place. So I would very much hope that this scheme will continue. It doesn't actually cost anything. All it does is move prize money from one pot to another pot where it's very effective. So I would hope this scheme could continue, unless there's obviously a crash in the finances. And at the moment, the levy looks to be back on track, running at a very similar level to what we would have expected from last year. So I'm hopeful not only will this scheme continue, but that it can be expanded. I move on to the next question, and that is, what help is there available for small 1 to 2 horse owner breeders? I'm going to ask Claire to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. And what I'd say sort of as a starting point for that is it obviously depends on what kind of help and assistance that you need, and that's what the TBA is here for. So, I mean, obviously we can provide some more specific advice. Just email us or call us, and obviously when we can sort of point you in the right direction. But in terms of sort of, if you like, general support that's out there, obviously the government approach has been to offer schemes that are available across, you know, all businesses rather than necessarily targeted at specific sectors. The industry did put in some more specific requests early on, but obviously the government have quite understandably focused on those broader schemes. So it's worthwhile going through gov.uk. Obviously there's a lot of information available on there, and there are schemes that may well apply for smaller owner breeders. For example, you might be eligible for the small business grant funding of up to £10,000 if you receive rural rate relief or small business relief. If you've got a VAT payment due, you can defer that payment to the 31st of March 2021. And Racing Welfare as well are offering specific support on those schemes if you want to talk through with them what scheme might apply for you. Obviously, I think what the survey did tell us is that while some breeders are already feeling the financial impact, that the worry is what's coming really, and concern over the future, particularly around obviously drop in sales prices or inability to sell young stock at the sales. So obviously, I mean, Julian as well has mentioned, you know, the Great British Bonus is really going to hopefully help with this. We believe it's timely and it will support prices for British bred fillies at the sales in the months ahead, and hopefully give everybody a chance of maximising their sales prices in this difficult environment. Obviously, we've focused on fillies, given that is often where the biggest financial challenges apply. Obviously, if you decide not to sell because of the market, the scheme also offers obviously a really good incentive to retain and race your fillies, with obviously up to additional £20,000 prize money per race available for qualifying races. Obviously, we're continuing to monitor the general economic situation, and as Julian says, we really appreciate your feedback. So any further surveys, please do fill them in. They're really helpful for us, and also help us to engage with industry and with government. And just generally do feedback what we can do to help you. I think that's key. So I'd encourage you obviously to pick up the phone and speak to us or email us. And if that doesn't answer your question, hopefully then we can provide something a bit more targeted in response.
And then the next question, which really Claire's covered part of, but when are members likely to see the support plan?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, the TBA trustees have been meeting every 6 weeks, and we've been in regular contact with them as well. When they met in the beginning of April, we looked at our strategic priorities for the year and reset them based on the COVID crisis, and we're working through those now. Obviously, the key one was the launch of the scheme, which the TBA is managing and promoting, the Great British Bonus scheme. So That was, if you like, the first plank of the support plan. I mean, what we're doing now is we're working really on three main areas, on how we support breeder businesses, on equine health and welfare strategies, and on sort of future education and recruitment initiatives in line with our charitable objectives. Over the course of the year, we'll obviously have a number of announcements about new ideas and initiatives that we'll be launching, hopefully. I suggest, you know, that we've sort of recently told members that we've had to obviously delay the AGM from July, given we can't at the moment meet. But we've put that back to Sunday, the 22nd of November, in the Jockey Club rooms in Newmarket, which is the Sunday before the breeding stock sale starts. I'd encourage everyone to put that date in your diaries and come along, because that will obviously be an opportunity to give a full overview of that. But it's really very much watch this space. We've got a number of things in the pipeline, and obviously interested to hear any views that you have of things we should be doing.
Thank you, Claire. I don't have, are there any more questions come in?
Yeah, so we've had one further question just very recently, which is, how will the Great British Bonus support breeders as vendors at the sales? Julian, did you want to sort of just follow up on that? I think I've covered it to a degree.
Yes, well, we will have presence, a strong presence there to show everybody exactly what the benefits are of this. We will have Grant Pritchard Gordon, who's our manager of the scheme at the moment. He will be at all the sales, and he will be making sure that everyone is fully aware of every horse or every yearling or foal that is qualified for the scheme. So if you have a horse that's going to be qualified for the scheme and you're planning to go to sales, please contact the bonus scheme's website, and I'm sure that they will be working really hard with you to make sure that everyone knows all about this. We want to make this scheme work really well. We want full awareness of it amongst purchasers, obviously, and vendors. So I think, you know, this is an opportunity to really promote British breeding, and I'm very hopeful that we can make that stick. Any more questions, Claire? Coming? None
that have been asked, no.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I hope this has been useful. It's a trial, and I say we really want feedback from all of you as to how it's working, and particularly things that you'd like us to address or questions you'd like us to answer, because I'm sure you're all sitting out there in the sticks and worrying, and we're all worried, obviously, about the future, particularly of the sales and how this industry is going to move forward. But we're happy to hold regular webinars or answer questions directly as much as we possibly can. We will continue to work on your behalf within the industry. One thing we are doing is making sure that the whole racing industry understands just the risks of breeders deciding that they're going to cut back. The foal crop and the racing industry are very closely aligned, and if there is a severe cutback in the number of foals born, then the racing industry will have to adjust. And I don't think most of the racing industry is fully aware of that yet, but we're making sure they understand it. So thank you very much. And thank you, Olivia, for hosting it. And I hope this has been worthwhile.
Thank you very much, Julian and Claire. Just to add to that closing statement, just to let you know, obviously we've tried to answer as many questions as we can today, but for any that have been previously sent that we haven't answered, I will get back to you all as soon as I can. And for any other feedback or comments, please contact us via the contact information on the TBA website. Thank you very much and take care.